Hi, everyone. I'm Cindra from AVAC. I'll tell you what AVAC is in a second. And I'm joined by my colleague, Brianne Lessner. And soon our colleague, Jessica, will be joining us. We're all pretty much based in New York, in the USA. We're stuck here. We can't get to Europe, unfortunately. Our passports are useless. I think to start off with, just so that Brianne and I can get familiar with you all. I know Attila, I've met before. I don't know if I've met any of you other people. Oh, there's Jessica. She's joining us offline because she has, as I said, a sick baby. But maybe if we could just introduce ourselves and I guess say who you are, where you're located, why you're here, just so that we get a familiarity and a sense of your connection to HIV prevention. I can go first, if that helps. So my name is Cindra Feuer. I am a former sex worker. I am a member of the queer world. I've been an HIV AIDS activist since the early 90s. I've been a journalist covering HIV and AIDS issues for many years. And now I've been at AVAC for many, many years, working to advance HIV prevention globally. So that's me in a nutshell. Oh, and I live in New York, but I also part-time live in Paris or France. And that's how I have a relationship with EATG. I work closely with several of the people there. And with that, I guess, should we just go in order? I don't know if all of our cameras are in all of our videos in the same order, but I see Attila next.
Hi guys, we almost know each other, but just to make it short, I'm from Hungary and I'm an activist, mostly interested in PrEP and HIV prevention.
Good.
Of course, I'm a part-time activist because I have to work alongside my activism work, but the situation has not improved that much since we last met, Cindra. So yeah, there is a lot of work to be done. And the reason I'm here is that I still want to and need to learn and embrace new stuff and embrace new information. So that's why I'm here. Thanks.
Great. And Attila and I met at a PrEP in Europe conference in Warsaw last year, right?
Yeah, I think it was in 2018, by the way.
Whatever.
I'm the next.
Go ahead, please. Elaine.
Yes, my name is Eliane Beksininahadzo. I'm originally from Burundi, but I'm living in Netherlands past 14 years. I am a HIV activist, mostly interested in fighting HIV stigma. That's why my name is HIV Stigma Fighter. And I am also an artist, do African music, dance, I write poems and a lot of stories. So I use also that to inspire people, and also I use it also to fight stigma, showing just that HIV can be you can lead a normal life. So yes, that's what's normally, so
nice
far.
to meet you, Eliane.
And I am here also to learn more because I can bring the message to my community, share what I've learned here. So
great.
Thank you.
Manuel?
Hello, my name is Manuel. I live in Seville and I'm working in ADARA Association, it's an NGO. I am a sexual health educator and I am working in my NGO with different programs to help the sex workers, also programs for teaching about STIs and in the prison for the prisoners. Also, I have programs especially for the migrant people. And also in our organization, ADARA in Seville, we are offering a rapid test of HIV, chlamydia, gonorrhea, B and C hepatitis, and syphilis. This is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Greg?
Hi, my name is Greg. I live in Warsaw in Poland, and I volunteer for one of the Polish NGOs in the program that is supposed to help people who just found that they were HIV positive in the first days, weeks, months after the diagnosis.
Great, thanks. Andrea?
Hey, so I'm from the UK, but for the last 3 years, I've been living in Iceland. I'm HIV positive now for 9 years, and I'm doing everything that I possibly can to try and stop any new diagnoses. I'm a board member for the charity HIV Iceland, and I'm a fundraiser for an English charity, Terence Higgins Trust. And I'm here just to learn as much as I can, to network, and as I said, do anything that I possibly can to prevent any new diagnosis.
Thank you. Brianne, hi, you're next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brianne Lessner, Cindra and Jessica's colleague. I am newer to the HIV prevention scene. I just started out with AVAC based in the US about 2 years ago now, but I'm here on the call just to continue learning. I've been doing a lot of work with community engagement at AVAC, and so it's great just to see how some of these trainings work and to learn alongside all of you. So great to be here.
Thanks, Brianne. And then we have Juan Fran.
Hello, my name is Juan Fran. I live in Malaga, south of Spain, and I work for an organization called Apoyo Positivo, who works mainly with LGTB and HIV positive people. And well, I'm a sexual health educator and psychologist, but I work mostly with HIV people in everything related, like going with them to the hospital, giving advice, counseling.
Okay, let's go to Peter.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I am Peter van Holter. I'm the executive director of EATG, but I have been there for about 1.5 years, still finding that I have a lot to learn about the HIV/AIDS topic. I was coming from a very different domain, and I was working in Central Africa for 10 years. I was exchanging with Eliane today because apparently I lived very close to her hometown.
In Burundi?
In Burundi, yeah.
Okay.
So I still have the feeling I have a lot to learn about HIV/AIDS. So I try to attend to the extent possible, even though I'm not always successful. And I want to say, Cindra, that we met last year in Basel.
I remember.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Nice
I remember
to see you.
meeting, but I was going to say, where was it? Because all those meetings are a blur to me, especially the ones in Europe. I can never remember where I was. But yes, we did meet when I think you had just come to EATG. So
exactly.
Nice to meet you again. I'm glad you could join us.
Likewise.
So then just moving forward, then we have Jessica Salzwedel, my colleague with a sick kid.
Yeah, hi, my name is Jessica. You may see my sick child or my healthy child, because I got 2 of them on this call at some point. But yeah, I work at AVAC as a program manager and research engagement. I focus a lot on prevention. I also think a lot about HIV cure. I think most people at AVAC would call me like a deep science nerd. If it's in the lab, if it's under a microscope, I'm all about it. So, later on, I'm going to be talking about the immune system-based prevention and a little bit of the cure strategies under investigation. So yeah, I really think about science translation a lot, and I'm really interested and excited to learn how you guys think about it.
Jessica's my right-hand person when I need some science backup. Okay, and last but not least, I can't see your name, but you're right there.
Manu?
Yes, I suppose I am. Hello, everyone. I'm Manuel. I'm from Spain, and I work in Adara, like my mate Manuel that has told before. And how Manuel said, we have different programs for key population in Adara. We make HIV and STIs tests, and we attending people in detention and migrants and other key population relationation with the HIV and STIs.
Thank you, Manu.
You're welcome.
I think that's all of us. I'm trying to drop a link into the chat box. Is that dropped in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, so if everyone could go to that site, and then I'm gonna share screen, and I'm gonna go like this, and then I'm gonna go like this. Okay, so if you can go to that, my question for everyone is, what is HIV prevention? And if you could just jot down, does that link bring you to?
Yes.
Okay, so just feel free to jot down. There we go. We've got it. We got a little word cloud here that is gonna, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so keep going, whatever you think treatment is, HIV prevention treatment. PrEP, treatment, testing, condoms, self-confidence.
And if you hit submit, you can always just re-click on the link and enter more words.
I think it's up to 3 people. I think it's up to 3 words a person.
Yeah. I submitted 1 word and hit enter, so I'm gotta go back.
Okay. I like not enough accessible. All right. So that was my fancy trick. I guess it's done. I think we're there. So what do we have? Treatment, information, education, not enough accessible, PrEP, trust, knowledge, compassion, U equals U, life testing, condoms, self-confidence, necessary, comprehensive. I like necessary, not enough accessible, self-confidence, awesome. So these are all obviously great and all applicable to HIV prevention. And also what this represents to me is the 3 approaches to HIV prevention, which are biomedical, like PrEP. And as you know, this is a biomedical training. So biomedical meaning anything that's anything that is sort of medicalized or within the body, physiological and biological, any of those kind of interventions is what we are going to be focusing on today. But here, obviously, there's also, so the other pillars are behavioral and structural. And so access is definitely a structural problem. Public health services, whether they exist or not, is a structural issue. And then there's the behavioral stuff like compassion and trust and knowledge and self-confidence. And then again, treatment is also a biological or biomedical. So as I said, we're going to dive into the biomedical, and I see treatment, I see PrEP, but we're going to get really, really into it. So thank you for that. I'm going to get us out of there, come back. And now we're going to get into it. And so let me just say though, so today we're going to get into the research pipeline. Anyway, so today we're going to do the pipeline, the biomedical HIV prevention research pipeline. And then Friday we'll get more into, we already have stuff like, as we know, we have OralPrep, we have condoms, we have treatment, we have male circumcision. And it's more about what are the roadblocks and what are the best ways to implement and get these things that we already have to the people that need it most. But today we're going to really focus on the science and what's coming and what's new. And just as a background for AVAC, in case you don't know and you're wondering what we are an NGO. We're an advocacy organization. We're based in New York, in Harlem, New York. But we focus most of our work, we're global. We're a global HIV prevention advocacy organization. And most of our work is focused in Africa. And that is because in Eastern and Southern Africa. And that's because traditionally, that's where the highest rates and the highest HIV burdens have been. We don't work in Burundi, but we work mostly in South Africa, Uganda, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, a little bit in Nigeria, and Tanzania. We've just recently pivoted to COVID because there's a huge need for communities to be informed and engaged and mobilized around the research into COVID vaccines and treatment, and have a big say and make sure that any of the products are equitably accessible. So we already did what is HIV prevention. I'm going to draw your attention to the right-hand side. We know that treatment is prevention, but let's sort of go into more of the actual prevention that exists. As I said, there's structural, behavioral, and biomedical. And so we've got, I'm going to draw your attention to the biomedical. So we've got prevention of mother-to-child transmission, and that's with ARVs. We've got testing and counseling. We've got OralPrep, and we're going to hear today a lot about the new types of PrEP that are coming out. We've got blood supply screening, microbicides. Actually, we have now the vaginal ring that's loaded with dapivirine, and we'll get into that today. Obviously, clean syringes, STI treatment, medical circumcision in Africa, not necessarily in Europe or in the West, but specifically for Africa. Drug and alcohol use treatment, behavior modification, treatment as prevention, and condoms. That's sort of a good, I mean, obviously that's not everything, but it's something. It's, I mean, sort of that gets to some of the foundations of what we already have. So given that we have all of these tools, we've got PrEP that's almost 100% effective when used consistently and correctly. We've got treatment as prevention, which allows someone who is virally suppressed to have sex without a condom. We've got we've got male circumcision that allows, you know, it reduces risk by 70%. We've got condoms, we've got all of these things. So why do we need to have more in the prevention pipeline? Why do we need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on additional biomedical prevention interventions? Or do we? Should we just really focus on rolling out treatment and PrEP and circumcision and all the other things and change the laws and decriminalize, you know, key populations? Is that what we should do instead of spending hundreds of millions of dollars on the prevention pipeline? So that is my question to you. Do you agree or disagree that we have the tools to end HIV? And I'm going to ask everyone, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to ask everyone to come back online, your faces. Okay, so I think we have most faces online. And so the question I'm asking is it agree or disagree? We have the tools to end HIV. So let's unmute ourselves. So everyone who agrees that we have the tools to end HIV, I want you to keep your photo on. The people who disagree, turn your video off. Brienne's the only one who went off, and Jessica went off. Wow, okay, so only AVAC. There's no bias there. There's no. Okay, so only AVAC thinks that we don't have the tools to end HIV. All right, so one person.
Why do they?
Okay, so one person from your group, from the people who do think we have the tools to end HIV. Someone tell us, make your argument. So who wants to tell us why we have enough tools to end HIV? One of you? It looked like Ilian was really excited to speak. Go ahead.
Well, I think we do have the tools to end HIV because the PrEP can prevent new infection and the vaginal ring as well, and injectables. So I think waiting for another, for example, they said in 2 years we may have the answer on the vaccine. We don't need vaccine. Let's treat people who are already infected and find the cure and prevent for new infection. Then we can end it in this way.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And that also shows me that you actually know the field of HIV prevention pretty well. That's great. So I'm going to go to my sisters, Brianne or Jessica, to come back online. And one of you, please tell us why you think we don't have enough tools to end HIV.
I guess for me, it's more than structural. Obviously, we have PrEP, and there's better delivery that we could be doing for PrEP. But it's also that PrEP doesn't work for everybody. And as an example, like in birth control, I have an implant in now because I don't want to have any more children. And because, to be honest, I would forget to take my pill every day. And that's something that doesn't exist in the HIV prevention space. So it's more than just treatment. It's more than just the tools that we have now, because we're clearly not filling the needs for people.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brianne.
Okay. I was just going to very similarly to Jess. I think PrEP might not work for everyone for a variety of different reasons. And I think if we do look to history, if we're looking for a durable end, I think that a vaccine will be needed in the future, but definitely hear where others are coming from.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you're being rebutted. Eliane, go ahead.
Yes, yeah, vaccine is not yet improved, so we're still waiting years, but HIV virus is not sleeping. It keeps infecting new people. The population is growing bigger every year, and every 40 seconds, somebody is dying of HIV, it's dying of AIDS. So I think if PrEP is not working for some people, there is another optional. You can still use condom. You can still prevent from getting HIV from using vaginal ring. So there is, at least we are lucky now, we have different approach for prevention than only having one single option. But waiting for the vaccine, which is coming in 2 years or 4 years, we don't know when, that is not the way we are going to end HIV and AIDS in our world, I think.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody for that. And I think you all touched upon some good stuff. Like, for example, we've seen from the birth control world that the more options that are available, the more the uptake of contraception in general, and the more prevention of unwanted pregnancy. So the more options and the more choices that women usually have, then the more people are actually protected. And we're seeing that with prevention as well, with HIV prevention. And to really eradicate an infectious disease, vaccines have been the #1 tool that has really, I mean, there's epidemic control, which we probably could do if everyone had PrEP, and if everyone had, all these combination prevention, a combination of this big package that we're offering, or that's on offer. But in the end, to really eradicate it, we would probably need a vaccine, just like COVID. So with that, I'm going to share my screen again, and here we go. Okay. And I'm just going to give you the global statistics like Eliane was just talking about. So this year, just last week, UNAIDS did their annual release of statistics and showed that last year, another 1.7 million people were newly infected with HIV. And that was a big fail because UNAIDS fast-tracked targets to reduce new infections by 2020. They were hoping or aiming for 500,000 people would only be infected, but in truth, it was almost 3 times as much. Is that right? 3 times as much or more. So something's not right, something's not working. And I mean, obviously it's a combination of structural, behavioral and biomedical, but we're feeling like we need to offer some more things. And here's another example. So this is Prep Tracker from Prep Watch, which is a tool of AVACs. And we actually chart, and we'll give you these resources on Friday, but we chart we chart the scale up of PrEP in each country. And basically this is from July, so it's probably higher. So it's about 850,000 people, maybe a little bit more. So July, so maybe 1 million people are on PrEP by now. However, the UNAIDS target was that there's 3 million people on the planet who could really benefit from PrEP, who are at really high risk, who might seroconvert in the next year. 3 million people. We're only a third of the way to that target. So, and another thing about, this is all about daily oral PrEP. I think this has come up already in our conversation today, is that not everyone can take a daily pill. Some people need something that's just for the moment because they don't have sex that regularly. So they want something that's topical and not systemic, doesn't go throughout their entire body like a PrEP pill. Some people might want an injection that lasts longer. This one pill is not going to be for everyone. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. I'm going to go over these very specific, or my team and I are going to go over these very specific. This is the pipeline. You're looking at it, and we're going to break it down. It might look a little confusing, but this is sort of like the real, if you take anything home from these 4 hours of training, I think this is a really important, and I believe I shared it with you all as a handout. But this sort of like sums up what's going on in the research pipeline and what's coming down the pike that we need to pay attention to, especially as advocates, to make sure that our communities and our countries are prepared for these, that we create demand for them, that they're funded and they're rolled out. So as was already mentioned, there's the vaginal ring that was just recently, the EMA just recently said that, that it's a green light, that in their opinion, it could be rolled out, but only in Africa, and we'll get more into that. We're also going to talk about oral PrEP. So as you know, we have TDF FTC, which is the Truvada pill. We've had that for many years, but there's a new drug, the TAF drug. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then there's a monthly pill coming. And then there's a dual pill, and we'll talk a little bit about those. And then probably the biggest news is, and the best news, I mean, depends if you like long-acting injectable, but we've had results, interim results from the first long-acting injectable PrEP. And this is really exciting. We'll get into the details of this. And then moving along, we've got antibodies, which is infusions of antibodies for the prevention of HIV. And Brianne and Jessica will get into that. And then we've got the standard traditional HIV vaccines that are also undergoing study. And we've got a dual, down at the bottom, we've got a dual study of looking at PrEP and vaccine at the same time. And let me just back up for a second and say, these are all efficacy studies. So they're like large scale, phase 2B or 3, you know, these are sort of the make or break studies that we're really going to focus on, because this is what needs our attention the most. So this is what we're going to go into detail today about. We're going to break down all of these, and the way we're going to do it is that we're going to go through each one for about 5 minutes, and then open it up for clarification questions, and then go to the next, and then hopefully at the end there'll be room for real robust discussion and more questions and answers. So first I'm going to do oral PrEP. So you have pills that prevent HIV and you're not using them. That sort of was been like, you know, so oral daily PrEP has been approved since 2011. It's almost 9 years and we still don't have 1 million people yet using it. It's been a real slow rollout because it was a major radical medicalization of HIV prevention. So, you know, some people say it was slow compared to what, we don't know, but there's a lot of lessons to be learned by how slowly PrEP has been getting rolled out. So I'm going to focus on FTCF, which was approved or shown to work. And last year so this is already approved, but it's imperfect. So this is the new drug that Gilead put out as a sort of streamlined, cleaner version of Truvada. And it showed that that FTCF, or we call it TAF, was no better than Truvada in the clinical trials. They compared the two of them in a randomized clinical study and showed that it was no better. However, each drug has its pros and cons when compared to the other. But there were some problems with the trials. The trials left out a whole half of the human race, which is cisgender women, and trans men. So we don't know if FTCF is protective in receptive vaginal sex. And Gilead got into a lot of trouble for that and then the FDA actually approved this new drug for anyone who doesn't have a vagina. So needless to say, a lot of people were pissed off. I think it was the first time that an HIV product or ARV, it was the first time that an ARV was actually approved for only half for cis men. And the minor improvements was that it doesn't hurt the bone density or the renal health, which is kidney. But it has a better outcome than Truvada, but Truvada does not actually have clinically necessary, Truvada's side effects on bone density and kidney are not, they're not common, and they're reversible. And so they're not even a big deal. However, FTCF does show that it increases obesity and cardiovascular problems. So if you are someone who has perhaps kidney issues or bone density issues, FTCF might be a better drug. But if you're someone who's worried about obesity and cardiovascular, which is probably more people, then FTCF wouldn't be a good drug. So like I said, they didn't include cisgender women, they didn't include trans men, and we have no idea if it works in people who use who shoot drugs. Also, they never looked at it to see if you could do on-demand dosing, which is when you take it right before or right after sex. It's not so it's only approved for daily dosing. So the FDA, one of their mandates that because they didn't look at women, the FDA said conditionally that they would approve it, but they'd have to do these trials in women as well. So now they're doing them in South Africa and Uganda. These trials were poised because of COVID, but they're about to start soon. So the implications for TAF is what's wrong with Truvada, which is what's used in Europe? Is it not good enough? It seems to be the same as far as efficacy goes. It's no better. So why would you switch to it? Maybe if you had, again, kidney or bone density issues, but maybe you don't even need to. The really important thing to know about this is that TAF is not available as a generic. So Gilead makes both TAF and Truvada, or FTC and TDF. Gilead makes both drugs, and lo and behold, the original drug of Truvada, or FTC TDF, went off patent this year. So they're pushing everyone to use TAF, which is still patented and very expensive. So it probably, I know that where in Europe, where PrEP is paid for by the government, they pay for generics. I doubt that they'll pay for a branded new drug that's more expensive and not necessarily better. We don't know if it works in cis women, and it has some bad safety profiles. So those are some of the issues. Moving along to the monthly pill. So there's this new drug called, and it's from Merck, the company Merck, and it's called islatravir. So this was on the timeline as well. Islatravir is a monthly pill that they are looking at, and it's probably going to be, the results will come out sometime this year. So this is something to look forward to and to prepare for, and we'll talk more about that on Fridays, preparing for some of these, how to do that. And they're also looking at implants. So you don't even have to take a pill, whether it's a daily pill or a monthly pill. They're looking at implants, and we'll get more into that later. And then there's the long-acting injectable PrEP, which is sort of the shiny new toy that everyone's excited about because it just was recently shown to work. So it's the drug is Cabotegravir. It's still in ongoing trials. It's made by ViiV and GSK. It's in trials still, but there was an interim analysis showing that it works. And they were actually, I'll get into the studies in a second. Let me just explain it. So it's Cabotegravir, and it's an injection every 2 months, and you get the injection in the butt or the bum. And they were comparing the injection of Cabotegravir to Truvada. And double dummy, double blind just means that there were 2 placebos. There was a placebo of the injection, and there was a placebo of the oral, and then there was an arm with the real Cabotegravir injection and real Truvada. And the interesting thing about this is that there's an oral lead-in. In the study, there was an oral lead-in where they gave people who were in the arm that was getting Cabotegravir, they gave them an oral pill of Cabotegravir for a few weeks, just to know that people weren't going to have really bad, serious side effects to it, because you don't want to just shoot someone up with an injection and you can't get it out of their body. And it turns out that no one really had any adverse responses to Cabotegravir, which was a really good thing. So after the oral lead-in, they did someone would get the injections, and then because once you go off the injections, the drug dissolves from your system, and it can take almost a year for cis men, and it could take over a year for cis women for the drug to be depleted from the body. And they call that the tail. That's the drug tail. And so while you're having this tail, if you are having sex and you want to be protected, they recommend OralPrep during the tail, just so that you don't get infected with HIV, and then you'll have drug resistance because you have this very small amount of Cabotegravir in your system. So could be potentially very complicated. It could be easy to be protected for 2 months with a shot, but then going off of it can pose some problems. Some people say if you go off of it, it means you don't need protection. So it might not matter if you have a tail. And nothing's easy. It's always complicated. So as I was saying, there's two prevention trials underway now. There's 083, which is in men in the Americas and trans women. And then there's another one in women in several African countries. And they've all had interim reviews, and they all showed that that Cabotegravir they compared them, as I said, to Truvada, and they also said that Cabotegravir is very, very, very good. In fact, it shows that it's fairly even better than the oral. And it's probably better than the oral because because adherence to a single pill is harder so adherence is not really an issue when you have a shot of 2 months drug in your body. And that's why they think it was a little bit better. You'll see the numbers here. So in the 083 is the one in the men. And it reduced, okay, so this is a little tricky. It says the men, it was a 66% reduction. And this was over the reduction in Truvada. So Truvada reduces risk. When you compare Truvada to a placebo, it reduces risk by over 90%. So this 66 reduction, when you compare Cabotegravir to Truvada, it's an addition. So this is 66% over the 90%. This is over Truvada. Same here. When you look at the women, the Cabotegravir was 89% better than Truvada was. So we're looking at really good protection here. And it was well tolerated, and there was a slight injection site reactions. This lays it out. If you want to go back and look at the slides, you can look at this. I'm not going to go over the details, but you can in the future. And this sort of lays it out again. So just some of the things to consider about long-acting injectables. It could improve adherence as an alternative to the daily pill. But what about adherence to getting, you'd have to go every 2 months to a clinic. That's an adherence in itself. Would you continue to go? It's 6 times a year. You need a shot 6 times a year, which is better than a pill every day for some people. But would people be able to make it to the clinic 6 times a year? There might be the drugs stay in the body for a long time. Would there be side effects? So the drug tail we talked about, would people want to take OralPrep? These are the people who don't want to take OralPrep in the first place, right? That's why they would want to take an injection. They haven't looked at Cabotegravir's interaction with hormonal therapy for trans folks. And they did not study this in trans women with butt implants because that's where the shot goes. So we don't know what it does when someone has silicone implants. And it needs to be, you need a medical provider to get this. Some issues around advocacy is how big of a burden will it be to the individual to get these injections? How to message and counsel users about the tail. The tail. This will be very intensely medical implementation. Will it be affordable? People will need to be trained. Who's going to pay for it, as always? I'm going to stop there and ask right now before I go into Dapivirine ring, are there any questions about OralPrep or long-acting injectable prep?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, please, go ahead.
Do they also consider of this long injectable with people who are taking also other sort of medication, for example, people with the comorbidities? Are there no interaction in case those people need to use the PrEP to prevent from getting HIV?
So usually in these clinical trials, they usually try to, well, they don't try, they screen people out for comorbidities. So they're doing it in healthy people. So they can look how that goes with healthy people. And then they do some, if there's a need, they'll do subpopulations like pregnancy, breastfeeding, adolescents. What did you have in mind for comorbidities?
I'm talking, for example, people with diabetes or high blood pressure. Or
Yeah.
I
don't know if high blood pressure. I don't know if high blood pressure would disqualify someone from the clinical trial, but they definitely get monitored for all physical ailments while they're doing their clinical visits. Any other questions on long-acting injectables or OralPrep or TAF?
A quick one, Cindra, do you hear me?
Yeah, hi.
I was just wondering, it's the first time that I heard that it makes a difference where you put the injection.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a difference between a bum and an arm, for instance?
Yeah, they want it in the fatty tissue. It's a scientific biological reason. But my knowledge doesn't go any deeper than that. Jessica, do you know?
So I don't believe it's in the fatty tissue. I think it's an intramuscular injection.
Oh, right. The muscle, right.
And the reason why is just the size, the actual bolus of the injection and the muscle.
Right. And one of the side effects, unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe they could work better, is it goes in the butt, and then there's like big butt pouches until the drug dissipates. Like there's big bumps until the drug dissipates.
Oh, okay, so it's more for aesthetic reasons then.
Is it aesthetic reason? I guess.
I'm just asking because, for example, tetanus or flu, you can get it everywhere, and I was just wondering if there was a specific reason. Because if the implants is a problem, then why not the arm? I just wonder about that.
That's a good question.
I think it's actually the amount of, like, it's literal, like the literal amount is that's why they prefer the larger muscle size.
Right.
But
okay.
Question.
Go ahead, Elian.
What about if they try to use by the belly? There is also some fat and the muscles there.
Well, I misspoke. It was the muscle in the butt. I guess the butt and the belly are similar, muscle and fat. So these are all really good questions. I think that if it was a viable thing, they would be pursuing it. And I can get back to you on Friday about like why not? Why not the arms? Why not the belly? Or maybe there's a reason they could. I think if this was the first proof of concept, they wanted to just prove it could work. So they isolated the butt. And we'll go from there. Maybe next generation will be, they'll be able to do the stomach and elsewhere. But all good questions.
Thank you, Cindra. And one more question. Wasn't Janssen working on a long-acting drug as well?
Janssen's working on a vaccine, and my capable comrades will get into that later on today. They're doing they're doing the Mosaic vaccine that's happening in Poland, Spain, and Italy. But that's a traditional HIV vaccine. We consider this injection, we consider it PrEP, because it's just injecting an ARV into the body, just like taking an oral form of PrEP. But this is an injectable form of PrEP, where Janssen's working on a real traditional vaccine that like works on your immune system to create a response.
When you say the injection by PrEP by injection is not able for the transgender if she have the implant silicone in his bag. It's a problem. It's a handicap because all the sex workers transgender, she have the silicone in his bag. It's a handicap. This new tool, because for me it's the new information. Thank you for your information, but I don't know that. But I am thinking about this because I work with she, helping the sex workers, transgenders. If it's not able for she because the silicone, but I think in the future, the pharmacy industry can be of a new injection.
Right.
For these persons, I think. Sorry for the English.
No, exactly. No, but you're absolutely right. And so that's why we're going to find out, is it feasible for trans women with implants? Can they put it in the belly or shoot it in the arm instead? And so for now, they're saying that trans women shouldn't use it if they have butt transplants. But there's other things they can use. They can use daily PrEP. But this seems like they should be able to use this as an option. So it's a really good point. It's a really, really good point. All right, so I'm gonna move on, okay? Unless there's any others, let me move on. Okay, Dipivirine ring. So this is the Dipivirine, or sometimes we call it the vaginal ring. So the DR, the DVR, the Dipivirine vaginal ring. And that's what it looks like. It's almost probably, that might even be real size-ish. It's a flexible silicon valley. Sorry. It's a flexible silicone vaginal ring. And it's loaded with it's an ARV, again, it's loaded with the ARV called dapivirine. And it's inserted for a month. So again, we get rid of the need, the daily adherence or the daily pill adherence. And we get rid of the need in the moment of sex. I mean, that's why PrEP is so good, right? In the moment of sex, you don't have to negotiate for condoms. You don't have to find the condoms, you know, you're already protected. So you're protected for 4 weeks when you're wearing this ring, and it's only for people with vaginas. So it's self-inserted. You don't need to go to the doctor to get it inserted. It's secret. Often, mostly 99% of the time, the male partner cannot feel it, does not know it's there. So it doesn't interfere with sex. It's super safe. So the dapivirine was developed by Janssen or J&J, and it's a slow release. The drug releases over the month. And you'll look here. So it reduced risk in the phase 3 clinical trial by 35% and 27%. That's not very high, especially if you compare it to something like PrEP, like daily oral PrEP or injectable PrEP, or even treatment as prevention. You know, you're like 35%, 27%. I don't know. Why would I bother? But that was in the clinical trial, in the randomized clinical trial. Once they unblinded the study and they saw that it protected, they told the women, look, this is helpful, this is protecting. And so they opened it up and they offered it to women. And once the women knew that it was protective, they used it more. They kept it in more. They reinserted it more, and it showed that once they used it more, it was really protective by around somewhere between 40% and 63%. So it actually could cut your risk of, it could reduce your risk of getting HIV by 50%. Now, 50% maybe in the Netherlands is different than 50% in Burundi or 50% in South Africa, because the burden, the rates of HIV are so much higher. So this is just some lists about the studies, and I'll draw your attention down to the hope and the dream. These were the open labels, and this is where they showed that it was more effective. Because in the regular randomized clinical trials, some people don't come back, and so they average in the people who didn't even use it, and that brings down the effectiveness if you don't use it. So right now, they know that it works, and the next step is to study it in adolescent girls and young women. This is really geared towards Southern and Eastern Africa, where for young women who are really at risk. So they want to see if it's going to work in young women who are 16 to 21, who traditionally, they've done other studies, and it showed that the younger women didn't really keep it in as much as the older women. So will they keep it in, and will they get it every month? Will they get a new one and then reinsert it? They're looking at it for pregnant women. They're looking at it for breastfeeding women, and also in development, because this is successful. And another thing that's really nice about this is that it's not systemic. It's not like a pill or an injection, and it doesn't go all in your blood system. It's very sort of at the place, and it stays in the vaginal cavity and all around there, and it's not as much in the rest of your system. They're looking at a 3-month one. So on top, so the next generation, we know that a month one works. Let's see if we can make it work for 3 months. And in addition to 3 months, they're looking at to combine it. So the dapivirine is the HIV ARV, is the HIV prevention. It's an antiretroviral. They want to combine it with an estrogen contraception, so that a woman can be protected from pregnancy and HIV at the same time. And that's in development now. So let me just tell you where the ring is now. So the ring, the EMA, which is, yes, the European Medicines Agency, just in July gave a positive opinion for the vaginal ring to be rolled out and distributed in Africa. And it's very, it just feels a little bit weird. Why is Europe doing this for Africa? And one of the reasons, or the major reason, is that there are many countries in Africa, as we know, and not a lot of them regulatory authorities, so they don't really have the capacity to make these decisions. So the EMA is sort of looking at all the data and it took them a couple years to go through all the data, and they said, yes, this is safe enough and effective enough to be rolled out. They're not going to roll it out in Europe, but they're going to roll it out in Africa because, like I said, it will reduce risk in because the risk is so high. Introducing something that cuts risk by 50% will go a long way, as opposed to in Europe. If the Europeans want this, if the Europeans want this, then they have to apply yet again for Europe, and they have to look at how well it would work in Europe, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen. It'll take time and money. And it doesn't look like it's going to be rolled out in Europe. Although I think the FDA in the US is looking at it, I think. Also, this means because the EMA gave a green light, that means WHO can pre-qualify it, and it means that it can be funded by the big funders like Global Fund and PEPFAR. So that was the vaginal ring.
How costly is that, the vaginal ring? How costly?
Well, it really depends where you are, right? So if Global Fund and PEPFAR are buying them, it's going to be mostly free. It will be free for the women in those countries, and then everything. If it's even, I doubt it'll be rolled out anyplace else anytime soon. But it'll definitely start out, as long as PEPFAR and Global Fund are around, they'll supply it.
Sorry, I have another question. So if I understood properly, the drug stays in the vagina with the ring?
It's inserted into the vagina for a month.
So it will only protect for penetration in the vagina, I guess. What about anal sex? It's not working there.
Yeah, but can you imagine putting a ring up your... Like it just, like it just doesn't physically feel good. It's just not, it would work probably, but who wants to walk around with a ring this big? Like,
I didn't mean to put it in the.
No. Let's,
But it's like it's only protecting. For penetration in the vagina.
Yeah, but there's other stuff, and I'll talk about it in the next slides. There's rectal microbicides as well.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yes. Why then EMA only give positive for the only African countries? It's for using that vagina ring. Why?
I guess I'm not being clear when I try to say so. Because risk is so high in African countries for young women, like in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, I think it's like 2/3 or 1/2 of women are, by the time they're 25, 50% of women by the time they're 25 have HIV. So if you it's not as powerful as PrEP, and it's not as powerful as treatment, in preventing, because it's maybe 50%. But if you give a young woman something to protect themselves that reduces their risk by 50%, and their risk is so high, it's worth it. But is it worth giving it to someone in the Netherlands whose risk is really low, and it's still
Okay, I thought it was because of it's just poor countries, or it's not a very 100. They are not 100% safe to be used.
No, they're absolutely safe
on European people. So that's
no, of course. I mean, that's what it looks like, superficially, of course, and there's every reason to think that. But all these studies have been proven like there's safety in every single phase, and they would not, the EMA would not approve something that wasn't safe. The FDA wouldn't approve something that wasn't safe. And the WHO certainly wouldn't go along with it. So you've got some pretty heavy hitting regulatory bodies saying this is safe.
Cindra, one question. When you are talking about the vaginal ring, effectiveness is not 100%.
No.
If you are offering this tool for the young girls, and you are offering a tool with not 100% effective, what's your opinion about this? Because if you use the PrEP in good condition, is good, effective. If you are using condoms in the good condition, good, effective. But the ring is,
it's a great question.
Talking about the 16 or 30%?
Right, it's a great question, but the factor is human behavior. With the condom, with the condom, you have to negotiate with your partner, and not all young girls can negotiate condom use with their partner. They're not in control of using a condom. With PrEP, you have to take daily oral PrEP. A lot of people don't remember to take their PrEP. They don't even have, they don't even know where to get PrEP, or they don't have, it's stigmatized. It looks like they have HIV and they're on treatment. So there's a million reasons why a young girl might want to just insert a ring in her vagina for 4 weeks and not think about it.
It's, I think, to sharing the ring and condoms also, I think, probably.
Yeah, combination.
Sharing.
So
yeah, both
no, but these
at
are
the
all
same time, I think.
But I think that the real answer is to offer the young girl PrEP, offer her vaginal ring, offer her condoms, and let her choose what suits her lifestyle. And what, does she need something? Does she have a boyfriend who's willing to wear it? Does she want to just insert it for a month and not think about it? Or does she want to take a daily pill? And then eventually an injection, maybe 6 times a year. But, and not all young women are the same. Some are going to choose the injection and some are going to choose the condom, and good that they have options.
Yeah. Okay. When you follow that logic, then I would say that because it is a means of getting the ARV in your body. So I was a bit surprised when you say it doesn't protect you from anal sex or from for example drug use. I mean, it's just how to get the ARV in your bloodstream, right? So why is it only safe for vaginal penetration?
I don't know. I don't know that the absorption in the bloodstream gets to a level of protection, because they're not ingesting it. So it's not, they're not ingesting it and they're not injecting it. They're just inserting it so that it's not necessarily piercing through the mucosal lining. I mean, it's probably lying on it. It's just that the level of drug is not enough to penetrate into the whole system of the body.
Okay.
It's more topical. It's more local. We call it local. It's like, it's just there in that place. They'll be protected. The drug will be like enough. I mean, it does get into the system, and it might even actually protect anally. I think they have done some studies about microbicides, the gel that if you insert it vaginally, it shows some of them. Sometimes the anal area will be protected, but this is different.
I would just like to add as well, though, I think for this demographic, it's very useful. Anything that reduces any risk can only be positive.
Yeah.
And then the very last point that you said about putting it together with a to stop pregnancy, that would just be ideal.
Right.
That's really good. So
right.
I hope
and that
that way.
That's sort of the future. It's multi-prevention technologies where they protect against pregnancy and HIV and other STIs. And that's all in the research. It's all in the early phases of research, like preclinical and like phase 1. They're looking at so many different chemicals to put in the rings and to put in the injections. And I'm going to get more into it right now. So here we go. Oh, wait, let me share my screen. So various clinical and preclinical. Perfect segue. Okay. So as I was saying, there's the ring, the gel, the film. This is like, you know, those Listerine patches that you put in your mouth that dissolve for bad breath, injections. I forget what these are called. I forget what those are called. This is kind of like a, an enema, an implant, a pill, and a patch or something. So these are all vehicles to deliver ARVs. So we've got a lot of different ARVs. We're looking at TAF, tenofovir, emtricitabine, dapivirine, cabotegravir, and there's even more on the way. More drugs mixed with different deliveries. And I'm going to get a little into it. And those are more. These are more in the, as I said, the preclinical and the phase 1. So we've got rectal and vaginal gels. Pretty much it's more about rectal gels these days. The vaginal gels have been put on the shelf a little bit because they were studied. They didn't show great protection. And we've got now the ring and we've got other things. But rectal, people are really interested in rectal because, again, they don't want to take, and this is for people who do not want to take a pill or an injection because that's systemic. They might not want the drug in their body. They might not need it every day. They might not need it for the whole month. And so we call this on demand. So meaning taking it, using it at the time of sex. Some people hate that idea. Some people don't want to have to think about prevention during the time of sex. And they want to know that they're protected at every hour of the day because you never know who you're going to meet on the subway or on the metro. So they're also looking at implants that go under the skin. And again, we call these are all sort of PrEP, right? Like you load them up with, this is Cabotegravir, TAF, this is the Merck drug. And the good thing about implants is that you can remove them. Unlike an injectable where it's in your body for maybe a year, you can remove it, or it could dissolve in your arm as well. And these are moving into phase 2 and 3 this coming year. And then there's transdermal, which goes under the skin. And you can, again, easily take that out as well. They're looking at cabotegravir. And then mostly for MSM, for gay men, they're looking at lubes that are loaded with ARVs, douches that are loaded with ARVs, and enemas. And we call these behaviorally congruent because these are things that gay men are already using at the time of sex or before sex. And so why not load the douche with some ARVs, and then you'll have the whole pocket protected. Same with enemas and lubes. So these are some of the things that are being looked at now in earlier stages. However, I have to say that the field, the activists, especially gay men, have been very vocal about these because a lot of the funders and the researchers were like, oh, no, we need something systemic, like an injection or a pill that's going to get in the body and protect every orifice and every mode of transmission. Like it's good if you take a pill or if you have an injection, it's going to protect you from getting infected vaginally or getting infected anally or getting infected through the blood. They're like, so we don't even need rectal gels anymore. We don't need these douches. And then gay men were like, wait, excuse me, we don't necessarily want to be protected, systemically. Maybe we want just a douche to be, maybe we're having sex once a month, once a year. And maybe during that once a year, we want to just be protected for that day. So it was a big fight, and we had to keep fighting for our rights to have lubes, douches, and enemas that are protective. And then last but not least is a dual pill, as I was talking about the multi-prevention technologies. So this would be a daily pill that you take. It's loaded with TDF FTC, which is Truvada, mixed with an oral contraception, and this is for women. And this could possibly be on the market in about a year or a year and a half, because we already know that we already know that the oral FTC pill works. We already know that the oral contraception works. If you merge them together, they're just having to do bioequivalent studies. So it's not phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It's not going to take very long. And then we'll have a pill that does both, which is great because there's a whole push now to integrate HIV services with sexual and reproductive health services. And this is my last slide. This is just a timeline. I talked about everything, but I'm going to draw to the bottom one, which is the Lenacapavir. And I didn't mention this, but they're also looking at a 6-month injectable. That means you get injected twice a year with PrEP. And so this is a timeline of when these things are going to be available. Like CAB-LA is already almost available. So regulatory possible approval next year in 2022. And then these are going to start trials soon. These are already started. Anyway, so you can see that by 2024, there's going to be a crazy amount, hopefully, probably, of all these different ways to protect yourself, in addition to what we already have. I'm going to stop there and open it up to questions before I hand it over to my colleagues. I know I just threw a whole bunch of information at you, but you're going to get the slides, and I gave you some background materials. But go ahead, Elian.
Yeah, I want to ask again, which country are now using already the vagina ring?
Oh, sorry if I didn't make it clear. And we're going to talk more about this on Friday. So the EMA just said yes, green light. It's going to be safe and effective to roll it out in these African countries. So now, each African country, their regulatory bodies have to agree to it, and the WHO is making guidelines for how to roll it out. And Global Fund and PEPFAR have to fund it. So it's going to be a little bit of a process, but hopefully within the next year, it's going to start rolling out. And it really is going to take a lot of civil society demand. And that we're working a lot with our sisters and brothers on the ground in Africa to mobilize around this. Just like with the CAB-LA as well. That's going to be approved soon. And we have to, it just doesn't happen. It's not like these clinical trials happen and then all of a sudden it's rolled out. That's where the hard work starts, is getting policymakers and funders and communities to know what it is, to want it, and to use it, and to sustain it. It's not that easy. As you know, because you all work in the communities, it's not easy to roll this stuff out.
So like PrEP, we've seen that it's taken a very long time. So even here in Iceland, they wanted to do their own safety studies, even though Europe and everybody else had already done them.
Waste of time.
They were 2-3 years behind.
Yeah.
At least this would give us the advantage, kind of media-wise, that there's a new drug or there's something new. So do you think that will help with the population being acceptable to take on this new drug or this new way?
Well, safety studies are just a waste of time and resources because they've already been done. There's no way that these drugs will be approved unless they are safe. So once they're approved, one of the things that's really important on the ground in countries is to do implementation studies, or operational studies. What's the best way to, and that's worthy of doing it in each different country or each different region, because what's the best way to roll this out in young African girls, and what's the best way to roll this out in gay men in Spain? And it's going to be really different. It's the same if it's Cabotegravir, long-acting injectables, or if it's, well, obviously the vaginal ring is not going to be rolled out in gay men in Spain, but if it's an OralPrep or it's injectable PrEP, doing an implementation study is worthwhile. But you could also do that while you're rolling it out. You can do it, just to save time. People lose urgency. This can save time and money and lives along, going down the road. So you can do a study while you're rolling it out. You can study the best way to roll it out while you're getting it to the people.
I want to talk to you about the PrEP. When I offering the PrEP in my NGO for the sex workers, for the cisgender sex worker girls, she refused the PrEP because that meant to have sex without condom.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about also the last information with you to fight the HIV and at the same time the pregnancy. Thank you for your information, because it's the first time I know. And I am thinking about that. If I offer for these sex workers these new tools, it's a pill to fight the HIV and to fight the pregnancy at the same time. But that means no use to condom. And it's a problem because for the sex worker, cisgenders, it's the lot of they are working every time with condom.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to offer this tool or PrEP or the PrEP with to prevent the pregnancy. What's your opinion?
If the condoms are working, if she's able to negotiate condom use, it's great, because then she's protected from HIV and she's protected from STIs and she's protected from pregnancy. And if she has no problem using condoms, then good for her. But it's also, there's a lot of sex workers who can't negotiate condom use, or they get more money for not using a condom. And also sex workers like using a condom because it's a barrier. Like it's a physical barrier, but it's also a psychological barrier. But it's best to just, if she can't negotiate condom use, there's no reason why she shouldn't be open to something else. But if she's fine with condoms, let her be fine with condoms if it's working. But I'm looking at time, and I feel like we should really go back to Jessica and Brianne, and they're going to talk about the immune, sort of the real heavy kind of science part of how to protect oneself, and then we can get more into it. Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Take
Thanks,
it over.
Cindra.
Go for it.
All right, we're going to flip-flop the order a little bit, and I'm going to start with broadly neutralizing antibodies. All right, so talking about antibodies. Antibodies are just Y-shaped proteins that are produced by the immune system. And what researchers are looking at with HIV prevention is a special type of antibodies called broadly neutralizing antibodies. And these are able to neutralize the virus and essentially disable it. So there are a lot of trials ongoing in early phases, exploring various combinations of bNAbs. And scientists are looking to develop bNAbs that have preferable profiles in terms of breadth, so how many strains of HIV they can protect against, as well as potency, or how much of the antibody is needed to provide protection. So at this point, it seems clear that at least 2 or more antibodies will be needed to provide this broad protection. But we are going to talk a little bit about one of the efficacy trials. So later on in the process of research is the antibody-mediated prevention study, or AMP. And this actually consists of 2 phase 2B trials launched in 2016 to test the ability of a monoclonal antibody, so just one antibody called VRC01, to prevent HIV. And it's important to highlight that these trials were never meant to produce a licensed product. Instead, they were designed to prove the concept of passive prevention by using bNAbs and determine a baseline level of antibody to achieve protection. So the trials were conducted among 2,700 MSM and TG people in the Americas and Europe, and 1,900 women in sub-Saharan Africa. Participants received either a higher dose of VRC01, a lower dose, or a placebo. and participants received these BNABs through an IV infusion every 8 weeks for a total of 10 infusions. So the primary objectives of the study were to test the safety, tolerability, and efficacy of the VRC01 infusions. And the study will also provide information on potential correlates of protection, PrEP adherence, the effect of PrEP on efficacy, risk behavior of participants, and the presence of anti-VRC01 antibodies. So as we prepare for the AMP results, we've kind of been talking about 4 potential scenarios. So on the one side of the scale, it's possible that we could see no protection. So for example, we could see that VRC01 neutralizes virus, but participants still had HIV infection. And this would suggest that neutralizing antibodies, or VRC01 at least, are not protective. So that's worst case scenario. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we could see very high protection. So we could see that even at low serum concentrations and against viruses that were poorly neutralized, participants were protected. And we don't know for sure, of course, because we're still kind of waiting for the results, but it's most likely that we'll see something more complex. So potentially scenario 2, where we see protection, but it's only at the highest concentration. And this would suggest that we need a combination of highly potent and broad antibodies to provide adequate coverage. Or we could see modest protection. So we see protection at different ranges of concentrations, but we do still have sporadic virus breakthrough. And that would suggest that a combination would be important, but maybe having more of a broad coverage would be more important than potency in that case. Like I said, the AMP trials won't lead to a licensed product, but they will provide a lot of scientific data on the passive immunization of VRC01. The data will hopefully provide insights that will inform the rest of the BNAB field and vaccine science moving forward. An interesting issue to watch, I think, for when the results come out is whether there are varying levels of efficacy seen across trial populations. So if you'll remember, the 2 trials were conducted in populations that differ by gender, geography, virus subtypes, transmission routes, access to PrEP. So we'll have to look for the sub-analyses that will tell us, if and which any of these accounted for differences in efficacy levels. And of course, availability, accessibility, and affordability of BNABs will be especially important considerations in the development of BNABs, especially now that we're having other long-acting prevention options like Cabotegravir come onto the scene that, as they are currently, are more feasible to manufacture and deliver. So anytime now we're expecting to hear the AMP results, and in this process, CABs and other sites will be notified, and participants will be unblinded, but the trials will continue to monitor for safety until week 104. And once the results are released, there will be a lot of communication efforts by the sponsors of the trial, as well as advocacy organizations, widely disseminating the results and helping people understand. And then further on in 2021, we'll hear some more additional data on some of these exploratory objectives. So a few resources we can share with you later for further reading. And that is it for me. I'll stop sharing. But happy to take questions.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of really great questions going on.
Okay, let's see here.
Maybe the first one is just to describe a little bit of the history of BNABs. Like, what is a broadly neutralizing antibody?
Jess, I feel like you do a much better job of that than I would as our science guru.
Yeah. Well, first I'll open up. There's a lot of really great answers in the chat. So before we start chatting, maybe somebody on the line wants to answer. What is a broadly neutralizing antibody?
I'm going, as far as I know, different antibodies that neutralize a few strains of HIV, more than one. And they are made in the laboratory. They are not just natural. Is that right?
That is right. There's a part at the end where they are made in a laboratory, but they are also natural. Does anybody want to know? Does anybody have a know why or how they're made in nature?
Just by making an organism getting HIV and producing these antibodies, maybe a cell or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And they normally, go ahead, Ilian.
Yeah, I was about to say that the antibody are also produced by people living with HIV. Our system produce them ourselves, but are not helping us anymore, as you said. So, yeah, that's what
Is
I
this
was.
like the CD4? Is that
Yeah, well, it's like a CD4. Here, I'm a mom. I got a lot of props around. But HIV is the kind of thing, right? It recognizes who you are. And broadly, and antibodies recognize HIV for what it is. If I were to put on a hat, you wouldn't know who I am anymore, right? I look very similar, but all of a sudden I have something about me that's a little bit different. Somebody, if I were to cut my hair, put on a hat. And that's what happens. And over time, HIV, in its effort to escape the immune system, does a really bad job of copying itself, and it makes small changes. And broadly neutralizing antibodies are able to recognize HIV in all of the hats, in all of the faces that it happens to wear. So I still look the same, but if I put on a hat, a regular antibody might not be able to find me. Or if I put on a pair of headphones, right? I still look the same, but I'm a little bit different. And a broadly neutralizing antibody can recognize my face, whether I'm wearing headphones, a hat, or nothing at all.
But there are antibodies that only can recognize one Jessica.
Yeah. And so they generally tend to happen in nature when somebody has progressed in their disease. And so they've seen lots of, HIV has evolved many times to try to escape the immune system, versus somebody who goes on goes on treatment very early after their infection, their disease hasn't, HIV hasn't mutated as much.
And so just, Brianne, I don't know if you talked about this, but so every 2 months, right? It's 8 weeks, the AMP study, every 8 weeks, every 2 months, in the clinical trial, someone will go and sit and get an infusion, which is it's not a vaccine and it's not an injectable prep. It's an actual infusion for 2 hours where they sit at the clinic and they get this long infusion, and that's the antibodies going into them. And then they come back in 8 weeks. And so they're looking to see, does this infusion prevent HIV? Now, obviously, if it does, great. However, that is not a viable HIV prevention option for the world. Like, we're not going to have everyone running around going to the clinic for infusions for 2 hours every 8 weeks. But it is a proof of concept, like Brianne said. If it works, how might we modify it to maybe help with a real vaccine, or maybe down the road make it more of a viable prevention?
My question: why then? I don't see the importance then to go through this. Why we know it's not really an option that is gonna be for our world. We can not. Why not concentrate on the things that can improve quick too in our community, save fast as possible than this infusion sounded to me like a fairy tale. Sorry.
But I guess it's going to be all the data that's been collected. And like you said, you could look at all of the different variables. That's probably going to be the most resourceful thing going forward, I think, to be able to collect.
It will inform science. It's not an immediate benefit to the participant in the trial, but down the road it could help inform making a vaccine, or maybe there is a way that we can make it that it's not a 2 hour infusion.
Right. Researchers are looking can we make this a subcutaneous injection? It's proven challenging, but I think that would be the way that the science would lead to if it were possible.
Yeah.
And we'll have more information on time to infection and dosing and, you know, some information about resistant viruses and things like that. But it's a very valid question. And I think, you know, one that comes up a lot.
Right. And this is the first one. This is the first study. So we're trying to, you know, it's proof of concept. And the results are coming out in January, February, right?
Yeah, any time now.
Oh, okay.
Over the next, you know, month or two.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And who is doing this?
The HVTN and HPTN. So
the U.S. National Institutes of Health.
Yeah.
And where is it happening? But it's happening in African countries and in the North as well. Do you know which countries? Is it happening in Europe?
Yes. So I have the list of countries here. So there were the two studies. The one study in MSM and TG people happened in Brazil, Peru, Switzerland, and the US. And then the study in cisgender women was happening in Botswana, Kenya, Malawi, Mozambique, Tanzania, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. So yeah, very different populations.
You'll see with all of these trials, the clinical trial breakdown is usually women in Africa and then gay men in the global north, kind of. They just follow the burden of the disease. Any other questions before we move on? Because I'm looking at the time. We have 21 minutes. Go, Jessica. Over to you. Or Brianne, whoever's next.
It's me. I am pretty good at technology, and I'm pretty good at technology, but I'm also really in love with sort of the basic science. So, and I love questions, and I often say this, but I think it's very true to just remember that there were a period, you know, there are lots of things that I don't know. There are lots of things that you know that I want to know more about. I can't know those things if I don't ask. And so if there's something that seems like you want to know more information, please ask. I can't see the chat, but I also really encourage questions in real time. I'm doing vaccine and cure, so I will take a bit of a pause, but I think just for the time's sake, it might be better to kind of go through all of it at once and kind of ask questions as we go, and then try to save a bit of time to end for questions. This is just to say that, you know, vaccine research, to put into perspective, I think that we often think about HIV. Obviously, this is an incredible burden that's been going on for a really long time, this epidemic. But yes, it's very challenging to develop a vaccine for HIV, and I can talk a little bit why. But the time frame of actually developing a vaccine is not really far off from other major epidemics, pandemics that we've had in the future. The obvious difference being COVID, and we can talk a little bit at the end about how you know, that some reasons why that may be the shortened time frame. But HIV is sort of in line with what's there. There's lots of different types of vaccines. You know, I'm not going to go through all of them, but you could do anything from, and some of you may have heard things like a live attenuated vaccine versus a protein-based vaccine versus a viral vector or a DNA vaccine. And it's just to say that there are lots of different places that you can take to make a vaccine happen. You can live attenuate, which is a dead virus. We don't use this in HIV vaccine approaches for prevention. But this idea that you could take a dead virus for your immune system to work, you could take protein parts of the virus, either on their own or put them inside of another vector to make something work. You might use antibodies like Brianne just told us about. All of this to say that a vaccine at its essence is trying to train your immune system to do something. And how it's trying to train your immune system and the vehicle that it's using and the parts that it's using are the sort of bread and butter of vaccine science and sort of trying to get those pieces to work. Some of the factors of a vaccine are selection of a target antigen. This is just what's being looked at. For instance, in HIV, the antigen that is in most vaccines that you'll see is going to be the envelope protein. And it's really because it's the largest protein. It's on the outside. It's included also in the gag pole, which are just two other proteins. They're the largest three on HIV. But it's just the part that you're looking at. The platform of delivery, this is really just the shell, like how you're getting it in, the packaging of it, what's the platform that you're using. Routes of immunization, this is just a fancy way of saying, is it a shot in your muscle? Is it a subcutaneous shot, or is it oral? Vaccines can be delivered either in any of those three routes. And we can kind of go through each. We can talk a little bit more detail about why you might use the different strategies. Dose is exactly what it sounds like. How much? Adjuvants are, these are things that you add to a vaccine that help boost your immune response. They're already approved in a few different vaccines. For instance, the flu vaccine that you get year to year generally has an adjuvant. And you use an adjuvant to boost your immune system separate from the vaccine, with the idea that a really good adjuvant, if you choose the right one and it works the right way, you might get fewer doses or a fewer time in between, so fewer sort of the regimen. So that's what an adjuvant does. The order of the antigen injections, this is also really important. Again, this is and this is when you think about a strategy and what we'll kind of cover being targeted now is the prime and a boost. So prime being you show it to your immune system first, boost being you boost the activity of your immune system. And the order can matter quite a bit. And the reason why is if you think about it like this, like the hat sort of analogy, if I showed you my face first, that might give your immune system a really great idea on how to fight Jessica's. But if I show you a hand, well, a hand is a pretty generic thing that kind of goes along to all people. So if I want to target maybe females who are 33 years old, a hand might be too broad of a piece. So you want to try to find the right antigen and the right specific order that you want to get it in. The combination that you want to put them through. So, and then the interval is just the timing. How often do you need that injection? And there's a few factors that kind of go into both the dosing and the interval. So to kind of talk about the pipeline, and I can't see questions, but again, just shout them out. Very informal here. But this is the vaccine pipeline. Cindra talked about this, so I'm just going to kind of go over each one of these. Number one, this is UHAMBO, HVTN 702, HVTN being the HIV Vaccine Trials Network. The trial was stopped in late January, early February due to futility, just saying that it was shown that between this arm and the placebo arm, there was no effect. This is the evolution of this, just to make sure that everybody has sort of the thread, comes from an earlier trial done in Thailand about RV144, which is the first HIV vaccine trial to show modest efficacy at 31%. And so this was taken and put into, it was adapted for clade C, which is the predominant HIV type in Southern Africa, and was kind of brought in through this trial. And it looks at this AVAC protein with a GP120 boost. MF59, for instance, is the adjuvant boost. So MF59 is used in flu vaccines in Europe, for instance. So that's that immune-based boosting. And AVAC and GP120 are the sort of combinations within that vaccine. Then there's 3 studies that are currently ongoing, but 2 of them are a mosaic, and I'm going to show a very rudimentary graphic. There are a lot of visual artists that I'm sure that can depict it a bit better, but a mosaic is exactly what it sort of sounds like if it's a combination, and it's meant to trigger your immune system to fight multiple strains of HIV. So not just sort of one strain or one clade, but to really be able to see, to identify all the sort of different types of HIV that are out there. And it uses Ad26, which adenovirus, which is the common cold. So it takes the shell of a cold virus and it stuffs it with with antigens, which are, like I said, the specific things that help us recognize HIV. So it stuffs it with things that help us look, that recognize, that teaches our immune system to recognize HIV envelope, and gag and pull, which are just the three biggest proteins.
Can I interrupt a little bit?
Yep.
Yeah. I say this study in Bokodo for where they are using women for trials in Malawi, Mozambique, South Africa, Zambia, Zimbabwe. Let's say outcome is positive. Is it can then be used as a vaccine for everybody, also for men and MSM and other people?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So Imbokodo and Mosaico are both basically the same vaccine, and Mosaico adds one more little piece to it. But these will all go together for licensure. So if there are positive results from both trials, they'll both be taken for a licensure package. So yes, it would be used in women, MSM, and TG women as well. Does that make sense? Great. You can see.
Sorry. It would be used for everyone, right?
Right. It would be used for everyone. Yes.
Everyone would use it. Yeah.
Yes, everyone would use it. Because this, I would also say this isn't being tested right now in adolescents. So that's a separate population: adolescents, pregnant women, breastfeeding women. So that's when we say everyone, that they're not technically under that umbrella right now. But this is everyone who's 18 and older. And yes, so this vaccine, if it shows positive results, would be used in those populations.
Also for very young girls, like teenager girls, or just little girls, or for children. It's gonna be a vaccine. So if you say everyone, include also children.
So that's what I was saying. So it's not everyone. It's not all populations actually. It's women. It's everybody who is 18 and older, excluding pregnant and breastfeeding women, that are included in these trials. So that's what would be going for licensure. That's a really great question. And you can see the countries where it's currently being tested.
No, I was just emphasizing that it's happening in Italy, Spain, and Poland in Europe.
Yes. This is just to give a little idea of a vaccine mosaic approach. If you were to look at the columns on the left, these would be the sort of vaccine, lazy pointer. These are sort of the different vaccine strains. So when we pick the mosaic vaccine approach, kind of looks across all of them and says, what is the most common protein, right, that is conserved across all these different regions? So here it's the blue circle. Here it's also the blue circle. Here it's the purple circle. And so you could think about this if you kind of expand it, right? This is a very simplified version of it, but you would include here, it might not just be circles, it might be also triangles, there would be a lot more colors. And so the mosaic vaccine is looking at picking what's the most common across as many strains as you can identify. And hopefully in the wild, you'd see sort of this order. And this is sort of the presentation of the antigens and why that matters. And so when you also think about like why is HIV so challenging, right? It's because there's lots of different strains, and over time, you know, this matters, but like this sort of HIV begins to mutate, and that's sort of the BNAB reasoning. But this is the basic concept behind a mosaic vaccine approach, and what's being studied in those two trials that I mentioned before, that if positive would go to licensure. It's also just worth noting that when we talk about the vaccine efficacy for this, it's unlikely that this would be a silver bullet vaccine. This is not going to be 100% effective. This would be something that is a partially effective product. And what it would be right now is not something that we know, right? Because we're in the middle of conducting these clinical trials. But it's worth noting that that this could be used in combination with something else, and that the lessons learned from these vaccine trials and also from trials like AMP teach us about the immune system and how to reverse engineer or work backwards to teach the immune system to recognize more and more strains of HIV, but also to build better and better responses and more potent responses to the areas that are conserved.
So is it like the vaccinations that we're seeing with COVID, like 94%, the percentages are different because they're targeted?
Yeah. COVID is a much easier virus to attack because it is much more stable in the sense that it doesn't mutate nearly as much. HIV is, people talk about it as a smart virus. It's actually not smart. It's just really dumb and it can't conserve itself really well. But coronavirus does conserve itself quite well. And so it makes it a much more stable virus, which is why it is so much easier to find a vaccine. So I can't tell you what kind of efficacy this would be, but I can't tell you what kind of efficacy the Mosaic would be right now because it's still ongoing, but it's likely to be a partially effective product. And I forget, I will look it up what the upper confluence, the confidence interval is for what it could be.
Jessica, is this a single dose vaccine?
It is not a single dose vaccine. So we'll just kind of go back just a little bit. So this is, you do get 4 doses over the course of the year, so it's every 3 months. And what this could look like, again, these studies are ongoing. So there's a lot in the data that, would impact, but right now this would be 4 doses. And then this is here, the Mosaic one is, again, it's still 4 doses, but at month 0 and month 3, so the first 2 doses in your regimen, you get an additional boost piece, which is what this is saying. This extra in parentheses, month 0 and 3.
Is it supposed to work from is it supposed to work from day 0, from the first dose, or is it working only from the second dose?
So when you would get your level of protection is still something that would be investigated in the,
Okay.
These are all really, the therapeutic threshold is still unknown, but this is what the vaccine strategy is based on non-human primate studies, and this is the dosing schedule is based on the amount of vaccine you can put in, like the actual physical amount that you can needed to put in, and also the half-life of thing is in there. So you need to continue to boost it to re-up the immune response until it can become permanent.
So one more question. So within these 2 ongoing vaccine trials, so we are hoping to have the result within 3 years. And then can be given to the population.
So when a trial becomes, there's going to be some sort of lag time between when a trial produces results and when it could become publicly available, and that has a lot to do with the licensure package, like going to the FDA or going to the regulatory body. It's a great question about what their post-treatment plan would be, and that would be whether they gave the vaccine, started people in the placebo arm on the actual effective vaccine, which is something I actually don't know off the top of my head. So that's something that we could look into. And Brianne and Cindra, I don't know if you know that right away and what their plan would be for post-trial access. But that's a great question. But it would take a little bit longer for it to be widely available. And again, COVID is a great example of it just, got approval and they're trying to ramp up manufacturing, but they still obviously don't have enough doses to go around to everybody.
I just wanted to make a comment about the, someone asked earlier about how many doses does it take to protect? And so the RV144 trial that was in 2009, that was the first proof of concept HIV vaccine. It was 33% effective. It wasn't enough to roll out. It was in Thailand. But the highest the peak of protection happened in what, month 12? In month 12. And that was after several of the doses. But then it went back down over time.
Right. So it's unlikely that the first time that you got a shot, your first vaccination would be protective for this strategy and this sort of 4-dose strategy. But we don't know what each dose is going to look like yet because the trial is still ongoing. And I am really conscious about time. I recognize there's only 1 minute. And Cindra, I'm going to leave it up to you if you want me to cover cure today or not.
I think Friday would be good.
Okay. So then I'll just quickly just say that PrepVac is another trial that's going on. And it's looking at, this is much more of a real world, but it's looking at the combination of a vaccine, so 2 different vaccines and 2 different types of PrEP. So it's looking at both Descovy and Truvada. This was delayed for a couple of months, but we hope that it will actually begin enrolling at the start of the new year. But it's looking at 2 different types of vaccine approaches, and then looking at, like I said, in combination with the PrEP arm. And so everybody's going to get like PrEP and a vaccine combination. So there are 4 arms. It's a very complex trial, but should be exciting, and it's enrolling men and women. And the reason why it says 2018 is because they did do a registration cohort in the beginning to kind of get a sense of the incidence in the area. So they finished the registration cohort and are actually beginning the vaccine, like PrEP combination arms. Like I said, we hope that they were supposed to start it in Q4 of this year, but obviously could not do that because of the pandemic. So the hope is that they would begin giving out their first vaccine, giving out the start of the arms in the beginning of 2021. If not, actually before, they may begin to administer shots at the beginning of this year, or I'm sorry, the end of this year. This is just really quick, kind of like going over just to say that, there is obviously a really big crossover between what's been going on in PrEP and what's been going on in COVID. And it's just kind of worth noting that obviously there's the AMP trial that Brienne talked about, and there's lots of results. And we saw that there were antibodies that were developed and given out in a COVID response. These are passive immunization. This is just sort of something, again, building on the HIV space. These chimp adenovirus vectors, again, adenovirus is just a common cold, but you can get like this idea of building on an adenovirus and using that as a vector, Ad26, which you may have noticed is being used in the Imbokodos, these 2 studies that I mentioned previously, the Mosaic, is also being used in a Johnson & Johnson vaccine approach in COVID. DNA vaccines, where you take pieces of the actual like DNA of a particular virus, whether it's coronavirus or HIV, and stick it in something else so that your immune system learns again to recognize those particular genes. A human adenovirus vector, again, that's what I have kind of talked about. And then mRNA, this is just messenger RNA. We kind of know this is the vaccine strategy that happened to work. We think that this could be potentially a more potent virus platform than a DNA based, and that's just because the way it's sort of an HIV vaccine candidate, and it's really just the ability of the immune system recognize. And obviously this did work in COVID. It's also the most novel approach, an mRNA vaccine. And lastly, just to say, I'm sorry, I know we're over time. It's just to say that there's lots of platforms that are sort of being used to kind of build on the HIV platform in COVID. And that includes, from funding to engagement to the really basic immune system research that has been discovered through HIV research over the last 35 plus years, and understanding retroviruses. I mean, all of it is really built to help COVID, which again is more stable, but is really building on a lot of the fundamental work that's happened in the HIV space. So that's what I'll say about vaccines. And then I guess we're going to do cure on Friday.
Yeah. Wow. Not bad for timing. So you guys, that was a lot. And it's a good thing we have Friday together and we can answer any of your questions you might have. It's probably late for you all. But we hope that you enjoyed that and learned stuff. And a lot of this is like learning another language, and you have to just keep repeating, hearing it over and over again, because there's a lot of new terms. But please come on Friday with all of your questions.
Thanks.
Yeah.
A great session. Thank you so much.
Great. Good. Well, we're looking forward to Friday, which will be a lot different because it'll be about getting these interventions to the people.
So you mean all the questions we need to ask, we can ask them Friday?
Yeah, I think so. I think we should all be, it's okay to leave, right?
No problem.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks all.
See you on Friday.
Thank you all.
Bye now. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks.